Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. The subject of the discourse today is tanha, that is craving, which is the root cause of all suffering in the world. All trouble, all hatred, all anger, everything that you see that disturbs the human mind and the human society. That is the source of all sorrow and suffering. That root cause is called tanha, thirst or craving. Craving for pleasure, craving for enjoyment, craving for possession, craving for name and fame, craving. That is the source of all suffering and trouble in the world. Now, the subject will be based on that. How does this craving arise? From where does it arise? It arises Vedana Pachaya Tanha. From feeling arises craving. Tanhaya jayate soko, tanhaya jayate bhayam, tanhaya vipamuttasya, nathi soko kuto bhayam. From craving springs sorrow, lamentation, suffering, and the whole lot of painful mental experiences. From tanhaya jayati bhayam, from craving there arises fear. And these two factors, soko and fear. So tanhaya vipamuttasya, one who is freed from craving, nathi soko kuto bhayam. There is no sorrow, no fear, no anger, no frustration, none of this. And whence fear? Fear is associated with all these factors. So, sorrow, the sense of loss, or grieving or lamenting, all these are connected with fear. The fear of losing what you have got, the fear that arises from, you see, what you do not know or what others can do to you or what might happen to you. All these things come because, you see, of some experience of sorrow and grieving, etc., which arises from craving, and the craving from feeling. So this is how one thing leads to another, and then life becomes miserable. So it is said, tanha or craving is something like a river. Actually it is called the river of sorrow, river of suffering. So, either you dam the river or see that it dries up, or you take all the necessary protective measures by which this very river can be turned into something, a river of prosperity. And that is the purpose of, you see, Vedananupassana, the meditation or the contemplative meditation on feeling. How that happens, we will discuss. Now, before we go further, we'll go into this gatha, the origin of the gatha, that is, tanhaya jayate soko, tanhaya jayate bhayam, tanhaya vipamuttasya nathi soko kuto bhayam. From craving springs sorrow, from craving springs fear. One who is free from all craving, there is no sorrow and whence fear. Now this gatha was, it was pronounced by Bhagavan Buddha on a certain occasion. The occasion was that one day early in the morning, Bhagavan became aware after he emerged from his 2 hours of Mahakaruna Samapatti, that is 2 hours of ecstatic samadhi, ecstatic absorption in boundless compassion. He entered into the samadhi at 4 a.m. and emerged at 6 a.m. As soon as he emerged, he focused his the all-knowing mind, the Sabbanyuta, the Sarvajna Jnana, the all-knowing omniscient knowledge, he spread it, so to say. So in his mental screen appeared the picture of a person. Now this person was just a lower middle class Brahmin gentleman who happened to become, who had some lands, and he engaged himself in agricultural activities rather than intellectual and all that sort of. But he was a believer of his religious faith, very ardently, no doubt, and he believed in the caste system in a very strong manner. But nonetheless, he was a good man. So one day when the Buddha saw this person and he knew where he was, he owned a land not very far away from Jetavana, the path along which the Buddha always went out for his alms round, the Pindapata. So while going for Pindapata, Bhagavan saw this man just entering into his field and getting engaged in some agricultural operation or rather planning out. So he went to the field and he says, "Well, Upasaka, how are you? How are things with you in your activities?" He said, "Oh, very fine, thank you very much, sir." He says, he called him by name. He said, "Thank you very much, sir, Gautama. I am pretty fine. I am undertaking all these various activities and hope to raise a very good crop and a very fine harvesting." That's it. So Buddha went away after hearing, said nothing. So for 3 or 4 or 5 times Buddha, once in a way he will drop in and see how these agricultural operations are progressing. He saw the various stages of tilling and then sowing and so forth, and the crop was raised. So at the end of the crop, when the crop was almost ripe, so Buddha also just passed, he dropped in. He said, "How are things?" He said, "Well, very nice, you can see my crop. Oh my goodness, very rich crop, and I am very happy, and I like you, you are my friend. So I can guarantee you that I am not going to eat all this myself. And before I eat, I am certainly going to share it with you, and I am going to offer a part of my crop for your ashram, for your monastery." And Buddha knew that it's not going to happen like that. Just the opposite may happen. Not may, will happen. But he didn't say anything. He didn't like to hurt him or, create a panic in him. So there ended the matter, he went away. Now after the day he wanted to harvest, he decided to harvest. It was a rich crop, absolutely ripe, very good paddy crop, ripe. Now, just the next day he was going to harvest, and he had asked many, he had fixed for his laborers and temporary workers and so on. And then he, having planned everything, he took rest, he slept. That night, as if from the blue, an untimely rain suddenly poured down and lashed over that piece of land. Rain, rain, rain throughout night, and the whole crop was completely, it just destroyed. Very fierce storm uprooted every plant, and big, they are followed by pouring, and the whole place was washed away, and there was nothing left on that piece of land. So by the time the sun arose in the morning, there was nothing in that very rich paddy field, nothing. So Bhagavan, of course, knew all this, and he knew that this fellow is going to get a terrible, terrible shock. He will be, it will be like a storm-struck experience. In the morning he ran to his place and to see what has happened to his crop. My goodness, there was no crop, nothing, just bald piece of land, soaked with rain and terrible to look at. He was completely heartbroken. There he flat sat down. He didn't get up. He put his hand on his head and went on weeping and lamenting and sorrow. Oh, what has happened? These gods don't help me. This, that and all that. He started blaming the whole world for one thing or another, and saying that this misery, this misfortune has befallen me. Oh, and started crying and went on. So, just before the, Buddha, while going for his alms round, just before that, he walked into that, he dropped into that piece of land, and there the Brahmin was crying, and he was absolutely unconsolable. So he says, well, Upasaka, don't be afraid, you listen to what I say. And there he gave this gatha, tanhaya jayati soko, tanhaya jayati bhayam, tanhaya vipamuttas nati soko kuto bhayam. From craving springs sorrow, lamentation, crying. From craving springs fear. What will happen in the future? I have no crop. There is nothing I will have nothing to eat. The whole world will fall. The whole sky will fall on my head and I will be finished. What will happen to my family, my this, my that? All the fear, all the frustration, all that arises from craving. The Buddha explained, look, dear devotee, don't cry. Just listen to the Dhamma very carefully, focus your mind totally on what I say. Then he developed a theme based on this, and by the time he had completed the discourse, this man, he was completely transformed. He was listening to Bhagavan with absolute, well-focused mind, attending every word and going deep into it, and soon his mind, all the sorrow and everything just disappeared, and he entered into the limelight, into the sunshine of wisdom. He saw everything changes in the world. Here I am, Now a middle-aged man, I used to be young man. This piece of land was given to by my father, and it was pretty untended, and I developed it, raised. And now by the time, so many years now, everything is changing. So many people that I know, they have all died. The whole world is changing in some way or other all the time. So here I am crying because change has occurred. What a foolish thing to do. Change is the stuff of life. Accept it. Don't try to run away from it. Blame nobody. No God, no human being, no guru, nothing. Nor even blame yourself or your so-called good fortune or misfortune. Just understand the reality of life. So when Bhagavan said this, smiling, full of love and compassion for this man, suddenly with this knowledge, he became transformed. His whole consciousness got transmuted. The milk became ghee, never to revert to the state of milk. So he entered into the transcendental path, the supramundane dimension of experiencing enlightenment. At the very first stage, he became a Sotapanna. Now, the question is, here is a person who was overwhelmed with Vedana of frustration and Vedana, the feeling of sorrow, feeling of lamentation and the terrible fear and the feeling of, depression that occurs because of that. Now, after hearing the words of the supremely enlightened Master, the Buddha, his consciousness changed. His mind changed. He understood the deeper laws of life. He accepted the reality of life and tried to make the very best out of it. He turned his Vedana, Dukkha Vedana, into Somanasa Vedana. First of all, it was Dukkha Vedana, painful feeling. Then it became Domanasa Vedana, a very depressed kind of state of mind. Then out of that, as deeper understanding sort of arose within himself, with the light of the Buddha seeping into his mind, so to say. And then his mind completely changed into the Somanasa Vedana, most happy and rapturous feeling arising from the experience of the higher reality, the reality of, connected with Sotapanna, the insight experience, the insight into the ultimate reality. And he experienced the Four Noble Truths right there. And there, as the first stage of enlightenment occurred, all the Four Noble Truths simultaneously occurred inside him. He entered into the supramundane dimension of path insight, then the fruition insight. Having been transformed this way, he fell at the feet of the Buddha. He says, "Oh Lord, give me Sharanam, give me refuge. You have transformed my life." This is the story of a good man, but very misled by his own religious dogmas. All beliefs in a soul or a creator God, and all those things seem so irrelevant. When we experience directly the nature of Nibbana, the ultimate truth, all these speculative theories about a religion, about ultimate reality, about this, about that, all just vanished. And his mind got transformed. From that day he became a different man, and he became so very devoted to the Lord. He used the same land now, entirely for the good of the world. And by dedicating that to remove the suffering of his those laborers who worked under him and all that, he not only brought change in them and in his own family, that piece of land became a piece of gold, brought so much of prosperity and happiness in so many families. Now, so this Vedana, he was able to transform the Vedana from a sad and depressed Vedana into a very living, light, bright, very happy and rapturous Vedana. That's all. So Vedana, my dear, once we have understood craving. Because craving arises from Vedana. If you want to uproot or have complete control over your cravings, all you need to do is to have complete control over your Vedana, your feelings. And feeling is a thing that goes with us from the time we are born. Until we die, it will be with us. It will be like it goes with us like a shadow which never leaves the body. It is like the breath. Whether you are aware, whether you are sleeping or awake, working, walking, talking, eating, whatever we are doing, throughout your existence, this bodily formation called breathing in and out is always there. You can't avoid it. Even if you try to do, you can't. Vedana too is one such phenomenon. It is the source of mental formation. Just as breath is the the primary element at the bodily formation of the body. It is with that the body forms. It is the nucleus, so to say.